The neural crown felt like ice against Ambassador Kira Valdence's temples as she walked the marble corridors of the hegemony's diplomatic station. Each step echoed with the weight of humanity's future, a future that had never looked brighter. After 3 centuries of isolation, Earth was finally joining the galactic community. "The Velthari are pleased with your progress, Ambassador," came the silken voice of Primarch Axelthane through her translation implant. The towering alien's crystalline features reflected the station's amber lighting, creating patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. "Your species shows remarkable adaptability." Kira forced a smile. Something in that pause made her skin crawl. But she'd spent 2 years learning to read the subtle politics of the hegemony. The Velthari controlled 47 star systems. The Korthic held 31. The Zenith Collective commanded 18. And Earth? Earth controlled 1 blue marble with 8 billion souls. Who had just learned they weren't alone. "We're honored by the hegemony's welcome," she replied, touching the ceremonial data pad that contained Earth's formal application for membership. "My people are eager to contribute to galactic civilization." Behind them walked Captain Jace Torino, her military attaché. His hand never strayed far from his sidearm. Despite the diplomatic protocols, his dark eyes constantly scanned their escorts, a habit that had kept him alive through the Martian Rebellion and the Europa mining wars. "Tell me, Ambassador," Axelthane continued as they approached the Grand Assembly Hall, "how does your species handle disagreement among your own kind?" The question sent alarm bells through Kira's mind. She'd studied every species in the hegemony. The Velthari were apex predators from a world of endless twilight. The Korthic were high-minded insectoids who viewed individual thought as a disease. The Zenith Collective were energy beings who consumed entire solar systems for sustenance. Each had joined the hegemony by conquest, absorption, or surrender. "We debate," she said carefully. "We vote. We find compromise." "How quaint." The Primarch's laugh sounded like breaking glass. "And if compromise cannot be reached?" Captain Torino stepped closer, his instincts screaming danger. Around them, the escort of ceremonial guards supposedly unarmed for the peace negotiations moved with the fluid precision of trained killers. "We find another way," Kira answered, though her mouth had gone dry. They entered the assembly hall, where representatives from every member species waited. The chamber was vast, with seats arranged in concentric circles around a central dais where the Treaty of Incorporation would be signed. Hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds watched as humanity's first ambassador approached the podium. "Honored members of the hegemony," Kira began, her voice carrying across the chamber. "I stand before you not as a conqueror or a supplicant, but as a representative of a species that values cooperation, innovation, and peace." Murmurs rippled through the assembly, some approving, others less so. "We offer our knowledge, our resources, and our dedication to the common good. Earth seeks nothing more than a place among the stars, and the chance to grow alongside our galactic neighbors." She raised the data pad containing the treaty. "With this signature, humanity joins the hegemony not as subjects, but as partners." The silence that followed stretched like a held breath. Then Axelthane began to clap, a sound like stones grinding together. "Beautiful words, Ambassador Valdence," he said, rising from his seat. "Your species truly is remarkable. Such poetry, such hope." His crystalline features shifted into what might have been a smile. "Such naivety." The ceremonial guards moved with inhuman speed. Captain Torino's weapon was in his hand before his conscious mind registered the threat, but plasma bolts were already searing through the air. He tackled Kira behind the podium as energy bursts scorched the marble where she'd stood. "Hostile contact, hostile contact." He barked into his calm as return fire sparked from his sidearm. Around the chamber, other delegates were rising, some fleeing, others revealing weapons of their own. "You see," Axelthane called over the chaos, seemingly unconcerned by the battle raging around him. "The hegemony has a very particular way of handling new species. We study them, we evaluate them, we determine their usefulness." A guard dropped as Torino's shot took him center mass, but 3 more emerged from hidden alcoves. Kira scrambled for the emergency beacon in her ceremonial robes. The device that would signal Earth of their status. "Your species, dear humans, has been found lacking. You see, you have something we need: your technology, your resources, your planet. But you yourselves," the Primarch's laugh echoed through the chamber, "you are unnecessary complications." The beacon activated just as plasma fire erupted around them. Kira felt the heat wash over her face as Captain Torino returned fire, his training keeping them alive second by second in the crossfire. But as the first wave of assassins fell, more emerged from concealed positions throughout the chamber. The hegemony hadn't invited humanity to join them, they'd invited them to die. The emergency beacon's piercing wail cut through the plasma fire as Captain Torino dragged Ambassador Validance. Behind an overturned ceremonial table, marble chips exploded. Around them, each fragment razor-sharp and superheated from the energy weapons tearing apart the assembly hall. "Stay down," Torino barked, his military-grade sidearms spitting coherent light at the advancing assassins. One Velthari guard dissolved in a spray of crystalline fragments, but two more took his place, their weapons humming with lethal energy. Kira's fingers flew over her diplomatic comm unit, broadcasting on every frequency Earth had established. With the hegemony, Mayday, Mayday, this is Ambassador Validance. The peace negotiations are a trap. Repeat. A plasma bolt vaporized half the device, the sudden heat flash singeing her eyebrows. Through the acrid smoke, Primarch Axelthane's voice carried with terrifying calm. "Your distress calls are quite unnecessary, Ambassador. You see, we've been monitoring your communications for months. Your secure frequencies, your encrypted channels, all quite transparent to civilizations that have mastered quantum entanglement communication for millennia." Torino's train eye cataloged their situation in milliseconds. 12 hostiles visible, probably more in concealment. Limited ammunition, no backup. Minimal cover in a space designed for diplomacy, not warfare, but he'd fought impossible odds. "Before, Kira, when I move, you run for the maintenance corridor behind the speaker's platform," he whispered, ejecting his spent power cell and slamming home a fresh one. "There should be service tunnels. I'm not leaving you, you're not just leaving me. You're saving our species." His eyes met hers, and she saw the same determination that had carried him through 3 wars. Someone has to warn Earth what's coming. Before she could protest, Torino vaulted over their cover, his weapon blazing. His first shot took a Korthic assassin through the thorax, the insectoid's chitinous armor cracking like an eggshell. His second burned through a zenith energy form, dispersing it in a harmless light. But there were too many. Kira ran, her diplomatic robes hampering her movement as she sprinted for the maintenance access. Behind her, Torino's battle cry echoed through the chamber, a sound of pure human defiance that made even the alien assassins hesitate for a crucial second. She reached the access panel just as an explosion rocked the chamber. The blast waved through her against the wall, her vision swimming from the impact. Through the smoke and flames, she could see Torino's position had been overrun. The panel recognized her diplomatic credentials and cycled open. As she crawled into the service tunnel, she heard Primarch Axelthane's voice one final time. "Captain Torino, your loyalty is admirable, but misplaced. Your species will join the hegemony as raw materials and energy, nothing more." The tunnel sealed behind her as plasma fire scorched the entrance. In the darkness, Kira could only crawl forward, following the faint airflow that indicated a path to the station's outer hull. Her diplomatic training had included basic survival protocols, but nothing had prepared her for the maze of conduits and maintenance shafts that honeycombed the massive structure. Emergency lighting flickered to life as the station's automated systems detected the combat. In the assembly hall, through the thin walls, she could hear the methodical sweep of security forces searching for her. The hegemony was thorough, they wouldn't leave witnesses. After what felt like hours but was probably minutes, she reached an observation port. Through the transparent aluminum, she could see the vast gulf of space and, in the distance, the blue marble of Earth, so beautiful, so vulnerable. Her backup communicator crackled the life, a quantum encrypted military channel that even the hegemony might not have cracked. "Ambassador Validance, this is Captain Morrison aboard the UES Defiance. We received your beacon. What's your status?" Tears of relief streamed down her face. "Captain, the negotiations were a trap. The hegemony plans to invade Earth. Captain Torino is dead or captured. I'm trapped in the station service level. Understood. Stand by for extraction." Through the observation port, she watched as 3 human vessels emerged from their holding pattern near the station. They used Defiance, UES Retribution, and used Valiant, Earth's first generation of interstellar warships, built with a combination of human engineering and carefully traded alien technology. They looked so small against the massive hegemony station. "Ambassador." Morrison's voice crackled again, were detecting massive energy buildups throughout the station. They're powering weapons systems. Get out of here, Kira shouted into her comm. Warn Earth. Don't risk. The station shuddered as massive plasma cannons emerged from concealed positions. The first salvo caught the Valiant broadside, her shields flaring brilliant white before collapsing. The second volley tore through her hull like paper, vending atmosphere and bodies into the void. Valiant is down. Morrison's voice was tight. With controlled fury, all hands lost. Retribution, fall back and prepare for jump to Sol system. But the Retribution was already burning hard toward the station, her weapons blazing. Captain Elena Vasquez had lost her brother aboard the Valiant, and her ship spoke with the voice of vengeance. Missile tubes opened like blooming flowers, seeding space with nuclear fire. The station shields absorbed the impact, but Kira felt the massive structure shudder through the observation port. She watched the Retribution's desperate charge as more hegemony vessels emerged from concealment's leak, predators that had been waiting in the system's outer reaches. This is Primarch Axelthane to the human vessels, came the broadcast on all frequencies. Surrender immediately, and we will grant you swift deaths. Continue this fuel resistance, and we will ensure your species suffers for centuries before extinction. Captain Morrison's response was pure humanity, defiant, furious, and utterly unwilling to yield. Hegemony forces. This is Captain Morrison of the United Earth ship Defiance. Message received and understood. Our reply is simple. A pause filled with the sound of charging weapons. Go to hell. The Defiance's weapons blazed in the darkness. As Captain Morrison shipped up toward the hegemony station, her hull screaming. Under the stress of maximum burn, Ambassador Valdance watched through the observation port as humanity's finest warship became a meteor of defiance against impossible odds. All Earth vessels. This is Defiance Actual. Morrison's voice cut through the static of jamming fields. Execute Protocol Omega. Repeat. Execute Protocol Omega. Kira's blood turned to ice. Protocol Omega was theoretical a last resort scenario. That assumed Earth faced extinction-level threats. It meant that every human ship, every human world, every human life was now considered expendable if it meant striking back at the enemy. The Retribution, already bleeding atmosphere from a dozen wounds, altered course toward the station's primary reactor. Captain Vasquez's voice came through the chaos, calm despite her ship's death throes. Defiance. Retribution beginning final approach. Tell Earth, tell them we made them proud. The massive hegemony station's point defense systems filled space with coherent light, each beam capable of vaporizing a city block. The Retribution flew into that storm of death with her engines at full burn, her hull peeling away in molten strips. But she kept coming. 30 seconds to impact. Vasquez reported, reactor overload initiated. This is for the Valiant. This is for humanity. Primarch Axelthane's voice echoed through the stations corridors as Kira crawled through the maintenance shafts. Fascinating. Your species chooses mutual destruction over surrender. How wonderfully primitive. The Retribution struck the station's lower hull at 17% of light speed. The explosion tore through 30 decks of alien engineering, vending entire sections to space. The station lurched, its massive bulk rolling as stabilization. Systems failed. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red as atmosphere rushed out through breached bulkheads. But the station held together, wounded, bleeding air and energy, but intact. Impressive, Axelthane continued, his voice now tamed with what might have been respect. Captain Vasquez has cost us 3 months of repair time. However, the station's primary functions remain operational, and our fleet is still quite capable of reducing your homeworld to radioactive ash. Through her stolen glimpses at access terminals, Kira watched the tactical display. The Defiance was alone now, dodging between the station's weapon emplacements while a dozen hegemony warships closed the trap. Morrison was buying time, but for what? Then she understood. The quantum communication array was still intact. Morrison wasn't trying to escape. He was trying to get close enough to transmit detailed tactical data back to Earth. Everything they learned about hegemony technology, weapons capabilities, fleet composition intelligence purchased with human blood. Defiance to Earth command. Morrison's voice was nearly lost in static as his ship took hit after hit. Package delivered. Recommend immediate implementation of Lazarus Protocol. Hegemony fleet strength approximately, Jesus Christ. A massive energy beam from the station's primary cannon tore through the Defiance's port side, sending her into an uncontrolled spin. But Morrison kept his ship together through sheer will and centuries of human engineering. Fleet strength to 100+ vessels. He continued, his voice now labored. Primary weakness appears to be their arrogance. They think they know us. Defiance out. The ship's final transmission was a burst of compressed data that lasted less than a second. Every scan, every sensor reading, every tactical observation from the brief battle. Then the Defiance followed her sisters into the dark. Kira was alone, on a station filled with beings who wanted her species extinct. She'd been crawling through the maintenance system for hours when she found the auxiliary communication center. It was a small chamber filled with quantum transceivers backup systems, in case the primary arrays were damaged, which, thanks to the Retribution sacrifice, they were. Her diplomatic code still worked. The hegemony's confidence had made them. Sloppy, Earth Command, this is Ambassador Validance, she whispered into the transmitter. I'm alive aboard the enemy station. The attack was premeditated. They've been planning this for months, maybe years. Kira, the voice that came back with General Marcus Steele, Earth's military commander. Thank God. We received Morrison's data burst. How long do we have? Their main fleet is already en route to Sol System. Marcus, they're not just planning invasion, they're planning extermination. They want our resources, our technology, our planet, but not us. Static filled the channel as jamming systems came online. The hegemony had detected her transmission. Kira, you need to know we're implementing the Lazarus Protocol. Every ship, every orbital platform, every military asset we have. But it won't be enough. We need more time. How much time? 72 hours minimum. Can you? The transmission cut off as security forces breached the communication center's outer door. Kira grabbed a plasma cutter from the repair station and backed against the far wall as armored figures poured into the chamber. Ambassador Validance. Primarch Axelthane's voice came from the lead figure. Your resourcefulness is impressive, but ultimately futile. Your species will join the hegemony as planned as component materials. The first guard raised his weapon, energy cells humming with lethal charge. But Kira had spent 2 years on this station, 2 years learning not just alien languages, but alien psychology. The Velthari were apex predators, but they were also supremely arrogant. They expected their prey to cower. Instead, she smiled. You know what you forgot to learn about humans, Primarch. What is that? We're apex predators too, and we've had to share one small planet with each other for our entire evolution. She raised the plasma cutter. That makes us very, very good at killing. The tool wasn't designed as a weapon, but human desperation had a way of repurposing anything into instruments of death. Her first shot took the lead guard's head clean off. Her second punched through to more before they could react. By the time their return fire scorched the air where she'd been standing, Kira was already moving, using every trick Torino had taught her during their journey to the station. The hegemony had invited humanity to negotiate. They were about to learn what humans did when diplomacy failed. Kira Validance had become something the hegemony had never encountered. In 3,000 years of conquest, a cornered human with nothing left to lose. The plasma cutter in her hand spoke with lethal precision. As she moved through the station's corridors like a ghost of vengeance, security alert level 7. Automated systems announced in 17 languages. Hostile entity contained to section 12. All units converge. But Kira wasn't contained. She was hunting. The maintenance shafts she crawled through for hours had taught her the station's anatomy better than its builders knew it. Every conduit, every access panel, every critical system. The hegemony's arrogance had given her the perfect education in how to kill them. Her first target was the atmospheric processing center for the diplomatic quarters. 3 Corthic technicians died before they realized their recycled air had become a weapon. As Kira introduced industrial solvents into the ventilation system, the insectoids' respiratory systems, so efficient at filtering their homeworld's toxic atmosphere, became their weakness when faced with compounds that ate chitin from the inside out. Primarch, came the panicked voice of a surviving technician. Over the comm system Kira was monitoring, the human has weaponized the life support systems. We have 17 casualties in Section 9. Fascinating, Axelthane replied, his crystalline voice carrying a note of what might have been admiration. The prey becomes the predator. Very well. Release the hunt forms. Kira's blood chilled. Hunt forms were genetically modified Velthari creatures bred specifically for tracking and killing in enclosed spaces. They moved on 6 legs with razor-sharp claws, had heat vision that could track a target through solid metal, and possessed intelligence just high enough to be creative in their killing. She had perhaps minutes before they found her scent. Her next target was the power distribution center for the station's primary weapons. If the hegemony fleet was heading for Earth, she could at least ensure the station couldn't add its firepower to the assault. The plasma cutter made short work of the access panels, but the control systems were protected by quantum encryption. That would take hours to break, unless she didn't need to break it. Kira smiled grimly as she pulled emergency coolant lines from the quantum processors. The hegemony's technology was more advanced than humanity's, but it still obeyed the laws of physics. Quantum computers required absolute zero temperatures to function, remove the cooling, and they became very expensive paperweights. The lights dimmed throughout the station as primary weapon systems went offline. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, but those crucial moments of darkness allowed her to move to her next target, the communication array that was coordinating the assault. On Earth, thought she was halfway there when the hunt forms found her. The first one came through the ventilation grate above her like a nightmare made of claws and hunger. 600 pounds of bioengineered death moving with liquid grace. Its 4 eyes locked onto her heat signature. Kira dove sideways as talons raked the air where her head had been, then rolled and brought the plasma cutter up in a desperate arc. The beam caught the creature across its torso, but its chitinous hide was tougher than the guard's armor. The hunt form screamed a sound like tearing metal, but kept coming. Kira backpedaled down the corridor, firing again and again, each shot carving away pieces of the monster, but not stopping it. The second hunt form dropped from another grate. Behind her, trapped between 2 killers, Kira did what humans had always done when faced with impossible odds. She changed the rules of the game. The plasma cutter's power cell was nearly depleted, but it still contained enough energy to breach a pressure hull. She aimed not at the creatures, but at the corridor wall behind them. The explosion blew out 6 feet of reinforced bulkhead, venting the entire section to space. The hunt forms, magnificent killers in an atmosphere, became helpless as they were sucked into the void. Kira grabbed an emergency oxygen mask and magnetic clamps, anchoring herself as the station's emergency system sealed the breach with force fields. Impressive, Primarch Axelthane's voice came through the station's comm system. You fight like a Velthari, but you cannot win, Ambassador. Our fleet is already approaching your system. In 4 to 7 hours, your homeworld will be nothing but cooling debris. Kira checked her stolen tactical display. He was right, the hegemony's assault fleet had dropped out of hyperspace. At the edge of Sol system, 200 vessels against Earth's hastily assembled defenses, it would be a massacre, unless Earth had those 72 hours General Steele had mentioned. She reached the communication center. As more security forces converged on her position, the quantum transmitters were heavily shielded, designed to survive direct hits from capital ship weapons. But they weren't designed to survive a human diplomat with nothing left to lose. Kira began pulling power cables from the nearby fusion reactor. If she couldn't destroy the transmitters from outside, she'd overload them from within. The radiation warnings on her stolen scanner climbed toward lethal levels as she jury-rigged a feedback loop that would turn the communication ray into a fusion bomb. You're going to kill yourself, Axelthane said, and for the first time, his voice carried something like concern. The radiation exposure alone will kill me in about 6 hours, Kira finished, which is 6 hours longer than I need. The security forces reached the communication center just as her improvised weapon reached critical mass. The explosion tore through 17 decks of the massive station, vaporizing the primary communication array and crippling their ability to coordinate the assault on Earth. But the price was higher than Kira had anticipated. The blast waved through her against a bulkhead hard enough to break ribs, and the radiation wash was already making her cells scream. She had minutes, not hours. She dragged herself to an emergency medical station and injected herself with every radiation treatment drug she could find. They would buy her time, not much, but maybe enough. Her final target was the hyperspace beacon that would allow the hegemony fleet to navigate the complex gravity wells around Sol system, destroy it, and they would have to approach through normal space, a journey that would take days instead of hours. Days that Earth could use to prepare. The beacon was in the station's most heavily defended section, but Kira was no longer concerned with her own survival. She'd become something far more dangerous than a diplomat or even a soldier. She'd become a human with a cause worth dying for. as alarms wailed throughout the station and emergency crews fought fires. On a dozen levels, Ambassador Kira Valdez began her final approach to the hyperspace beacon. Behind her, she left a trail of destruction that would take the hegemony months to repair. Ahead of her lay the chance to buy humanity the time it needed to show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of when pushed to the brink of extinction. Admiral Sarah Knox stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the 100 alien warships emerge from hyperspace at the edge of Sol System. Earth's entire fleet, 37 vessels built in the decade since first contact moved to intercept them. The odds were worse than hopeless. They were exactly where humanity fought best. All ships, this is Knox Actual. She broadcasts on all frequencies. Today we fight not just for Earth, but for the right of our species to exist. Every ship lost, every life given, buys our people time to prepare what comes next. She paused, watching the enemy fleet form their battle line. Make them pay for every inch of space. Make them remember why predators fear humans. The hegemony fleet approached in perfect formation, a living testament to 3 millennia of conquest. Massive dreadnoughts bracketed by sleek destroyers and bristling carriers. At their head flew the Velthari flagship Eternal Dominion, its crystalline hull refracting starlight into rainbow patterns of death. Admiral, came the voice of Captain Janeway. Aboard the destroyer Rapid Fire, their lead elements are entering. Weapons range. Orders. Knox smiled grimly. Earth's fleet was outnumbered 6-1, outgunned 10-1, and facing technology centuries beyond their own. But they had one advantage the hegemony couldn't quantify: they were defending their home. All ships. Execute pattern Delta. Scatter formation. Maximum burn. Let's show them how humans dance. The Earth fleet exploded into motion, each ship following seemingly random vectors that would make them impossible to target as a group. It was a formation perfected in the desperate void battles around Europa, designed for forces that couldn't match their enemy's firepower, but could outmaneuver them through sheer audacity. The hegemony responded with contemptuous efficiency. Their massive dreadnoughts opened fire in perfect synchronization, filling space with plasma beams that could vaporize mountains. But they were firing at empty space the human ships had scattered like schools of fish before a predator. Contact. Captain Rodriguez aboard the frigate Tenacious reported as her ship dove under the enemy formation, firing all tubes. Nuclear missiles streaked toward the hegemony dreadnought conquest of worlds, their primitive chemical drives barely visible against the cosmic background. The alien ship's point defenses tracked them lazily. Such crude weapons posed no threat to modern shielding. The first missile detonated against the shields as expected, as did the second. The third carried a special payload, a quantum resonance disruptor reverse-engineered from captured hegemony technology. It didn't need to penetrate the shields. It just needed to make them unstable for 3 seconds. The fourth missile slipped through and detonated against the dreadnought's hull. Direct hit. Rodriguez shouted, "Hull breach on target Alpha," but her celebration was short-lived. The conquest of worlds' return fire caught the Tenacious amidships, her shields flaring white-hot before collapsing. The frigate broke apart in a sphere of expanding plasma, taking her crew of 6 to 7 souls with her. Tenacious down, Admiral Knox reported grimly. All ships, weapons free, make them count. The battle exploded into chaos as human ingenuity met alien technology. The destroyer Relentless used its superior maneuverability to dance between two Corthic cruisers, playing them against each other until their own crossfire damaged both ships. The heavy cruiser Valkyria loaded her missile tubes with modified mining charges and turned herself into a massive shotgun, spraying the enemy formation with thousands of high-velocity projectiles. But for every success, the price in human blood climbed higher. The carrier New York was swarmed by Zenith energy fighters, her launch bays sealed one by one as coherent light burned through her hull. Captain Elizabeth Storm kept her ship fighting until the reactor containment failed, vaporizing her and her crew of 400 in a miniature star. "This is getting us nowhere," Captain Martinez reported from the battleship Pacific Thunder. His ship was bleeding atmosphere from a dozen hits, her weapon systems failing one by one. "We're not even slowing them down." Admiral Knox watched her tactical display as her fleet died around her. 18 ships lost already, and they'd barely scratched the enemy formation. At this rate, the hegemony would reach Earth in 6 hours. Then her calm officer looked up with desperate hope in her eyes. "Admiral, I'm receiving a transmission from Earth Defense Command. Priority 1 encryption, the hologram that materialized. On the bridge showed General Marcus Steele, his face haggard from 72 hours without sleep. Behind him, technicians worked frantically over displays showing orbital construction platforms throughout Sol. System, Sarah, we need 12 more hours. Can you give us 12 hours? Knox looked at her remaining ship's 19 vessels against a fleet that had barely been bloodied. Marcus, I've got less than 20 ships left. They'll be at Earth in 6 hours. I know, but Kira bought us the time we needed. The Lazarus Protocol is online. Steele's expression was grim. Every orbital platform, every mining station, every research facility is now armed. We've turned Sol System into the largest weapons platform in human history through the bridge. Viewports. Knox could see the first evidence of humanity's desperate preparations. Asteroid mining platforms were moving into position around Earth, their massive fusion torches repurposed as weapons. Deep space research stations had sprouted missile pods like deadly flowers. Even civilian ships were arming themselves with improvised weapons. Sarah still continued. We've learned something from studying the hegemony's own tactics. They've never faced a species that militarized their entire civilization in response to attack. They're expecting to face an army. Instead, they're going to face an entire star system that's chosen war. Admiral Knox smiled as understanding dawned. The hegemony had made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed humans would fight like civilized beings. Instead, humanity was about to show them what happened when civilization itself became a weapon. All ships. She broadcast to her remaining fleet. New orders. We're not trying to stop them anymore. We're hurting them, drive them toward Earth, make them commit to the approach. Captain Zhangwei's voice crackled back, tinged with desperate humor. Admiral, are you ordering us to run toward our own planet with the enemy fleet chasing us? That's exactly what I'm ordering, Captain. Trust me on this one. The remnants of Earth's fleet began a fighting withdrawal toward their homeworld. Bleeding ships and lives with every parsec, but behind them, hidden in the orbital shadows and asteroid fields, humanity's final gambit was taking shape. The hegemony was about to learn why humans had never been conquered. Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, seemingly defenseless as 200 hegemony warships approached in perfect formation. Admiral Knox's remaining 11 ships limped ahead of them, trailing atmosphere and debris, the battered remnants of humanity's once proud fleet. On the bridge of the Indomitable, now running on emergency power after 3 direct hits, Knox watched her tactical display with the calm of someone who had accepted death, but not defeat. Around Earth's orbit, thousands of small contacts moved with purpose mining platforms, research stations, orbital habitats, even luxury cruise ships that had been hastily armed with whatever weapons human ingenuity could devise. Primarch Axelthane sends his compliments, her communications officer reported. He's offering terms of surrender. What terms? Immediate cessation of hostilities, evacuation of Earth's population to labor camps, preservation of our useful genetic material. For hegemony purposes. Knox's laugh was sharp as broken glass. Send my reply. Tell the Primarch that humanity has studied his species' history. We know what happens to civilizations that surrender to the hegemony. Our answer is no. On the Eternal Dominion, Primarch Axelthane reviewed the tactical data with satisfaction. The human fleet was shattered, their homeworld was defenseless, and victory was minutes away. Their resistance had been impressive for primitives, but ultimately futile. Primarch, his tactical officer reported, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system. The humans appear to be powering up civilian installations. Desperation. Axelthane dismissed. They hope to make their surrender more costly. An admirable attempt, but mining platforms and research stations cannot threaten warships. He gestured to the view screen where Earth grew larger. Begin the bombardment. Target their major population centers first. I want the survivors to understand the futility of resistance. The hegemony fleet's massive guns swiveled toward Earth, energy capacitors charging with the power to crack continents. This was how the hegemony had conquered 47 worlds through overwhelming force. Applied with surgical precision, they were not prepared for what happened next. All stations. This is General Steele, came the broadcast from Earth Defense. Command. Execute Lazarus Protocol. All units, weapons free. Show them what humanity can do. The asteroid belt erupted into motion. What the hegemony had dismissed as mining platforms revealed their true nature. Each one was now a weapons platform armed with fusion torches, capable of melting through capital ship armor. Hundreds of them ignited simultaneously, turning the outer system into a constellation of artificial stars. "Contact bearing 270. The Eternal Dominion sensor officer screamed. Multiple inbound. The first mining platform's fusion torch beam struck the hegemony dreadnought inevitable victory amidships. The beam, designed to melt asteroids, carved through the ship's shields like they were made of tissue paper. The dreadnought split in two, venting its crew of 3,000 into the vacuum. But that was only the beginning. Earth's orbital habitats had been evacuated and converted into massive missile platforms. Each one launched 1,000 projectiles, not sophisticated weapons, but simple kinetic impactors accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. By electromagnetic launchers, the hegemony's point defenses, designed to intercept energy weapons and guided missiles, were overwhelmed by the sheer volume of incoming projectiles. Evasive maneuvers, Axelthane commanded as his flagship shuddered under multiple impacts. All ships, scatter formation, but there was nowhere to run. The gas giants' moons had been evacuated and turned into forward-fire bases. Jupiter's orbital stations opened up with converted particle accelerators, filling space with streams of near-relativistic matter. Saturn's rings became a minefield as automated weapons platforms hidden among the ice chunks activated. The research station Kepler Observatory, originally built to study distant galaxies, revealed its new purpose as its massive radio telescope ray focused into a coherent energy beam. The destroyer Swift Death simply vanished as the beam struck it, its matter converted to constituent atoms in a flash of hard radiation. "This is impossible," Axelthane snarled as his tactical display showed hegemony ships dying throughout the system, their civilians, research stations, and mining platforms. "Primarch." His tactical officer's voice was tight with fear. "They've militarized their entire star system. Every installation, every platform, every ship has been converted to military use." Admiral Knox watched from the Indomitable as humanity's desperate gambit unfolded. The hegemony fleet, so perfect in formation moments before, was scattering in all directions as weapons fire converged from every angle. But the cost was devastating. Many of the converted civilian platforms were destroyed by return fire, taking their volunteer crews with them. The luxury liner Paradise Lost, converted into a missile platform, took a direct hit from a Corthic battle cruiser. Captain Elena Morrison, sister to the Morrison, who had died at the diplomatic station, kept her ship firing until the reactor went critical. Her final transmission was heard throughout the system. "For every human soul, no surrender. All ships," Knox broadcast to her remaining fleet, "form up on the Indomitable. We're going to finish this." The 11 surviving ships of Earth's fleet turned toward the heart of the hegemony formation, their weapons glowing with lethal energy. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running on fumes and determination, but they were also defending their home, and that made them the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The heavy cruiser Stalingrad ran the Corthic dreadnought Hive Queen at full burn, her captain screaming defiance over the calm as both ships disappeared in a fusion fireball. The destroyer Edinburgh used her last missiles to cripple the Zenith energy ship Void Hunger, before being vaporized by return fire. But with each sacrifice, the hegemony fleet grew smaller and more desperate. "Primarch," came a panicked voice from the Eternal Dominion's bridge, "we've lost 60% of the fleet." The humans, they're not fighting like a military force. They're fighting like an entire civilization at war. Axelthane stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In 3,000 years of conquest, the hegemony had never encountered resistance like this. Species fought with their armies, their fleets, their governments. They didn't turn every single asset in their star system into a weapon. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "I'm receiving a transmission from the human admiral." Admiral Knox's face appeared on the main screen, her uniform torn and bloody from her ship's multiple hits. Behind her, the Indomitable's bridge was a chaos of sparking consoles and emergency lighting. But her eyes burned with unquenchable determination. "Primarch Axelthane," she said, her voice carrying across the void. "You came here expecting to find a civilization ready for conquest. Instead, you found a species that would rather die free than live as slaves." She smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression the Primarch had ever seen. "We are not your victims. We are not your subjects. We are humans, and we will never yield." The Indomitable's weapons fired one final time, her last missile streaking toward the Eternal Dominion. Axelthane watched them approach, knowing his ship's shields were failing, knowing that humanity had turned what should have been an easy conquest into the bloodiest battle in hegemony history. The missile struck home, and the flagship of the greatest military power in the galaxy began to die. But as the Eternal Dominion broke apart, Primarch Axelthane sent one final transmission that would echo through hegemony space. The humans, they fight like demons. Warn the hegemony. Warn them all. This species must never be allowed to spread beyond their system. It was already too late. Humanity had learned a terrible lesson about the galaxy they lived in, and they would never forget it. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Ambassador Kira Valdez stood in the rebuilt assembly hall of the captured hegemony station, now designated Earth Station Alpha and serving as humanity's first interstellar fortress. The radiation treatments had saved her life, though the cost was visible in the premature silver threading through her dark hair and the subtle tremor in her hands. She was no longer a diplomat seeking peaceful contact with alien civilizations. She was something far more dangerous, humanity's first xenological warfare specialist, tasked with understanding and countering the threats that lurked among the stars. The Hegemony Council has requested a ceasefire, General Marcus Steele reported, his image flickering in the holographic projector. Behind him, the lights of Luna City glowed against the stark lunar landscape, where humanity's new war-industrial complex was taking shape with terrifying efficiency. They're offering to return to pre-contact boundaries. Kira's laugh held no warmth. They attacked. U.S. under a flag of peace. Marcus, they came to our home to commit genocide, and now they want a ceasefire because we bloodied their nose through the station's viewports. She could see the evidence of humanity's transformation. The wreckage of the hegemony fleet had been salvaged and reverse-engineered with ruthless efficiency. Human ships now incorporated alien shielding, alien weapons, alien propulsion systems, but redesigned with typically human improvements. Where alien technology was elegant and efficient, human modifications were brutal and effective. The UES Retribution II, built from the salvaged hulks of 3 hegemony dreadnoughts, hung in space like a predator made of metal and fury. Her sister ships, the Vengeance, the Reckoning. The No Quarter represented humanity's answer to 3 millennia of hegemony dominance. They were ships built not for exploration or trade, but for one purpose: making the galaxy's apex predators understand that Earth's children would never again be prey. The Council is frightened, came another voice from the hologram. Dr. Elena Vasquez, FORMERLY, Captain Vasquez of the destroyed Retribution, now Director of Xenological Research. She'd survived her ship's destruction through a miracle of engineering and the stubborn refusal to die that characterized her species. Our intelligence networks report massive fleet movements throughout hegemony space. They're pulling back from frontier worlds to defend their core systems. Good, Kira said simply. Fear is the only language they understand. The door to the assembly hall opened, and Captain Jace Torino entered, his left arm replaced by a cybernetic prosthetic that incorporated salvaged Velthari technology. His survival of the initial assassination attempt had been another miracle, though he'd paid for it with months of reconstructive surgery and psychological rehabilitation. The Korthik have withdrawn from the Centauri approach, he reported. Long-range sensors confirm their entire Third Fleet is retreating toward their home system. Intelligence suggests they're expecting us to retaliate for their participation in the assault. And are we? Steele asked. Kira turned to face the hologram, her expression hard as diamond. Marcus, in the 6 months since the Battle of Sol, we've identified 17 species that participated in the attack on Earth, 43 worlds that provided ships, supplies, or intelligence to support the hegemony's genocide attempt. She gestured to the tactical display showing humanity's expanding sphere of influence. Every one of them needs to understand the consequences of attacking our home. The transformation of human civilization had been swift and total. The peaceful explorers who had sought contact with alien life were gone, replaced by a species that had learned the galaxy's most terrible lesson. In the cosmic dark, mercy was weakness and hesitation was death. Earth's orbital habitats now bristled with weapons that could crack planets. The asteroid belt had become a fortress system that could destroy entire fleets. Mars hosted the largest military academy in known space, churning out officers trained in the brutal realities of interstellar warfare. But perhaps most terrifying of all was how quickly humanity had adapted alien technology to their own purposes. Hegemony stealth systems became the foundation for infiltration networks that penetrated every major alien civilization. Velthari bioengineering was reverse engineered to create enhanced human soldiers who could survive in environments that would kill unmodified humans. Zenith energy manipulation techniques were weaponized into beam systems that made their original creators look like children playing with toys. The Altarian Collective has sent ambassadors requesting a non-aggression pact, Dr. Vasquez reported. They're offering favorable trade agreements and technology sharing. The Altarians weren't part of the assault force, Torino noted. Consulting his intelligence briefings, they maintained neutrality during the Battle of Seoul. Neutrality, Kira repeated, tasting the word like poison. They stood by and watched. While the hegemony tried to exterminate our species, that's not neutrality, that's complicity. She turned back to the viewport where human warships patrolled the shipping lanes that had once belonged exclusively to alien powers. Send the Altarians a message. Any species that wants peaceful relations with humanity needs to actively oppose hegemony expansion. Neutrality is no longer acceptable. Kira. Steele's voice carried a note of concern. We're talking about reshaping galactic politics. Some of these species have been neutral for thousands of years. And look where that neutrality got them, living under the boot of genocidal expansionists. Who would have eventually come for them too? Kira's reflection in the viewport showed. A woman hardened by betrayal and tempered by necessity. We're not reshaping galactic politics. Marcus, we're saving it from itself. A new hologram materialized in the chamber. Admiral Saranox, now commanding the Terran Deep Strike Fleet from the bridge of her flagship Indomitable II. The veteran officer looked older, scarred by the battle she'd fought in the months since Seoul, but her eyes burned with the same determination that had carried her through humanity's darkest. Kira, we've received word from our forward scouts in the Vega system. The hegemony is massing a new fleet, 800 ships, including their most advanced dreadnoughts. Intelligence suggests they're planning a second assault on Earth. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. 800 ships for times the force that had nearly succeeded in destroying humanity 6 months ago. Then Kira smiled, and it was the expression of a diplomat who had learned to speak in the language of war. Let them come, she said quietly. 6 months ago, they caught us unprepared and still lost 60% of their fleet to a handful of converted mining platforms and research stations. She gestured to the tactical displays showing Earth's transformed defenses. Now they'll face a civilization that has spent every waking moment since their last visit, preparing for their return. Through the viewport, the lights of humanity's new empire sparkled against the cosmic dark. Ships moved between fortified positions, carrying weapons and supplies to the dozens of systems now under Terran protection. The peaceful species that had sought humanity's aid after witnessing the Battle of Seoul were learning that Earth's children were very good at keeping their friends safe, and very good at making their enemies regret their choices. Admiral, Kira continued, when the hegemony arrives, I want them to understand something they've never grasped in 3,000 years of conquest. They came to our home claiming peace, then sent assassins. They expected us to die quietly, like civilized beings. She turned from the viewport, her expression carrying the weight of 8 billion souls who had chosen war over extinction. Instead, they woke up a species that had spent its entire evolution learning how to kill things that were bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than themselves. They wanted to know what humans do when diplomacy fails. The assembled officers waited in silence as Earth's first ambassador to the stars delivered humanity's final word on the subject of galactic peace. Now they know, we don't just fight back, we make sure the threat never rises again. Outside the station, human warships moved through space like sharks through dark water, carrying a simple message to every species in the galaxy. Earth's children had learned the rules of the cosmic night, and they played to win.